Alpha.
What's up, guys? I'm Richard Gouveia and I'm so excited to be back here with Sony Alpha. In this episode, we're going to be looking at specific situations where I was photographing Cheetah in different light as the light was dropping down. We're going to look at photographing rhinos and wildebeest. Specifically, I got into panning situations where we were doing pan shots. So it'll be a bit of a different situation, a different episode, doing a little bit more creative stuff and looking at how light impacts things. Remember to go back and watch the first couple of episodes where we went through the camera basics and setting up the camera. And in the first two of these wildlife photography sessions where we photographed lions, elephants, hippo, hyenas on a kill. So some really cool stuff that you can get your head around and start thinking about how you're going to photograph, and when you get into situations, hopefully plant some seeds that you'll be able to get some amazing images down the line. We look at settings, we talk about positioning and composition and how that all comes together. Don't forget to check out the cashbacks.co.za website for a 10% discount using the discount code WildRichard04. Yes, I'm a wild one, WildRichard04, for a 10% discount off your next Sony Alpha purchase. There are some terms and conditions, so please go check them out. It's all on the website. You'll be able to figure it out, and it's only limited to people in South Africa. So if you want to fly all the way here when COVID's done, you can do that too. So now let's get stuck right in. Amazingly, we had this incredible cheetah sighting. I was on the reserve. It was the second day on the reserve. I'd already spent 2 days with these hyenas that were feeding on a carcass, and it was chaos and beauty and amazing photographic opportunities. And the last thing I really expected to see was a cheetah, because they're not commonly seen in the area. Most of the time they'll move through every month or every 3 months or so. So it's quite a distance or time between them. But when I was able to photograph this guy, beautiful light, and the light was really dropping off. So we talk a lot about the settings and how that goes. So let's get stuck right in. Wow. We have got so lucky. Found a cheetah moving through an open area, and it's not a very common sight for these sort of, for this area. Maybe 3 or 4 times in a year you'll get to see cheetah, and he was just walking towards us. So the idea is to try and get in front of him, get your composition right. I've left quite a bit of space. I'll probably get some opportunity. The sun's dipping now, but as time goes on, the light is going to get a bit worse. I'll get a bit closer, so I used a bit of the light that was coming through the trees and that last sunlight to light him up and put him in a sense of space. The idea is space. Space is important, because what differentiates your shot from shooting a cheetah in an enclosure or at a breeding center? So that is all part of this whole deal. So we are really lucky to see this. So now we're just waiting. He's lying down off to the side here, and I'll get a couple of shots of him lying down. I'm trying to keep my shutter speed up. I'm up at ISO 800. Reason is this, again, light is dropping. I'm at 2.8 on the 400, and the 400 is just about right. What the longer lenses allow us to do is to get further away, so we're not impacting the animals as much, but by the same token we are still getting great shots because we can fill the frame. The problem comes in is if they come too close, then we have to switch, and a second body helps, or a wider lens, and only getting 640th of a second out of it. So we have to be very still. Beanbags work wonders. I'm just using the side mirror here as something to lean against. The advantage of losing the light is there's no harsh light, and because of cheetah's anatomy, their eyes are quite pulled back in their heads, so you don't often get to see the orangeness of the eyes. Now, because the sun's dropped there's no shadow, it's much easier to see into that part of the eye. Right, so you can see now how the light has dropped quite dramatically. Look at the eye autofocus, grab onto the eye as soon as we have it. It's quite an incredible system that happens. Obviously once this thing's gone a bit soft, and often what happens is in the evenings cheetahs will relax and start to go to sleep and find an open spot to rest because of the fact that they have such competition from leopards and lions. So it's better off to avoid them altogether at night and just keep a look around, and then during the day start moving around and try and catch something. Absolutely spectacular to see this guy. You'll see I've pushed my ISO up to 3200. I'm still at 2.8, and if we look at some of the images, you can see there some of the images there. I'm going to zoom all the way in. You can see the beauty of the eye. Look how crisp and clear that all is, just because of that eye autofocus. There's one from the other side. There's a bit more light involved there, but you can see how beautiful that eye comes through. Let's have a look at what he's doing now. Everything's slowing down quite a bit. We'll pop that focus point close to his nose, and then as soon as the thing picks up his eye, we're on, and we can take a few photos. So now as the light was dropping, this cheetah was started moving, and I was trying to get in a position where you can get them moving along, but it was twilight. Don't let the light from the camera here fool you as to how dark it was getting. You can see in the photos there's this beautiful almost magenta glow in it, and it's from this real low light. I was at 4000 ISO at 100th of a second, so I was really pushing the boundaries. That eye autofocus was locked on, and I shot away and taking lots of photos, hoping for a few that came out. So of about 40 photos, only about 4 came out where that animal was walking and keeping steady with us. So it was a great opportunity. Right, so spectacular sighting of that cheetah. Now, on another day, while moving around the beautiful Sabi Private Game Reserve, I came across a couple of groups of wildebeest that had joined together close to a waterhole and moving around, and they were alarm calling at one another and milling about. And the light was really nice because the sun was setting, so there's beautiful golden glow across the top, and we were having an amazing time watching and waiting for opportunities. Now, wildebeest aren't the prettiest animals, but let's see what I did in order to photograph these guys. All right, so there's some wildebeest along here. One of them's coming straight at me. It's gonna look really cool if I can get him set up nicely. He's in beautiful light, but he's actually on the side of the road, and the road's creating a bit of a distraction in my eyes from the photo. So what I'm going to do is wait and see if he comes off, or if one of the wildebeest on the other side of the road might come into a better position. So you got to watch out, think about what's in the background of your image, just to make sure that you, again, separating subject from background, making sure that it's as clean as possible. Like right now, the bad shot because he's got a stick right behind him. So if I took a photo now, it would look like a stick is growing out of his back, which isn't going to work. I'm back at F4. It's my safe place, happy place. I'm at 1250th of a second because there's enough light and 250 ISO. But as time goes on and that sun starts to set, we're going to change a lot there. The settings will change a lot. And obviously we're going to lose shutter speed very quickly. One of the other important principles to remember is that our brains work better in odd numbers. So threes 1356, 1357, sorry, my brain, clearly I'm a guide and a photographer, not a mathematician. 1357 are all good numbers. Anything over 7, over 5 even, you're really pushing the number, and your brain really won't notice that there's an even number. But 2s and 4s definitely pick up and don't work as well with the brain as what the odd numbers do. So Starling's just landed at his feet, which is adding a nice second subject to it. So it's not just about the wildebeest. Let's be honest, the wildebeest is not the most pretty animal ever made, and that needs to be taken into account when photographing them. So you're trying to get form and function and what they do and why they do it. As he comes closer, I might look at doing a portrait shot of just the head and those horns, and you can see his very prominent preorbital glands, just to really accentuate it. Even unpretty faces are pretty when photographed close up and get the detail out of the system. Youngsters having a tussle in the background there. I'm just going to see if I can get something decent. They're in the shade, and there's another one in the background that's in the light. So my exposure is pretty flat, but again it adds a nice second subject to the image to have something in the background. And what I'll do is I'm shooting to make sure I'm looking at my histogram in the eyepiece to make sure that I'm not clipping any lights or blacks either side, and that gives me a lot to play with in post. It allows me a lot of being able to saturate the blacks with a bit more darkness and temper the brights, the highlights, to bring them all into a balance. So it's shooting a bit flatter in order to think, and I'm thinking about post-processing before I'm in. I've dropped my aperture now. I've just got the 2 of them because they're almost horn to horn. And I dropped my aperture to 2.8 just to really blur out the background and focus it on the head and where the horns are locking in. And it actually looks very, very nice. So I wasn't trying to chase after things because I had so much time on the reserve. I had 7 days, my own vehicle, I could move around at my own pace. And so I wanted to try and get something a little bit different. And as I moved through past these wildebeest, there was still some more wildebeest down the bottom, but there were some rhinos grazing on the edge of the river. So I went down, parked really low, and then started shooting these guys. Right, so I've got a rhino and a calf feeding in front here, and the calf, what I've done is I've actually parked myself much lower than them. They're on a bit of a ridge, and the calf is moving across the ridge with no vegetation. The vegetation is on the other side of the river, which gives me a lot of room to play with in terms of the beauty of the scene and separating subject from background. Now that it's bumped towards me, that doesn't help anything, but when it turns and gets itself open, and I'm hoping mom will go up and be there with the little one. Yeah, there she goes, and that'll create a really nice image again because the background is so dark and they're in the perfect open sunlight, the beautiful golden light from behind. What it's creating is this image that if I darken the foreground, if I underexpose the image, you get this great contrast, and the subject really pops because the trees behind it are these dark green colors. So let's wait for it to go across. Maybe the little one will even come in and give mom a little nose nuzzle. Come on, turn your head now. Here's mom looking straight at me, ears focused on me. And again, it's all about when the rhinos are doing this and you get that complete focus, the ears facing you, the body facing you. Just in the photo, you pick up that energy that there's something
more happening than just grazing, or they're interested in something, and you're picking up that attention.
Amazingly, while I was sitting there with these rhinos, the wildebeest started coming back down and things started to get a little bit different, and it was time to be a bit more creative. So let's chat about panning and how to get creative with slow shutter speed and photographing something that's not always the prettiest animal and making it look interesting.
And in the background here come the wildebeest. And the bull is so worried about that, the other bull in the area, that he's actually running around chasing his herd together and making sure his females stick with his herd so that he doesn't lose any of them. So they're running now. I want to... So you can see he's chasing the rest of the herd here. So as he was running down the hill there, I'm actually trying to get some pan shots. So I've slowed the shutter speed tremendously and keeping things in motion here. So he's actually chasing this one back up the top here. And around, maybe he'll come running back in, or he's trying to get the little one back into the herd here. So now these guys are backlit. So when they come back to the herd, it'll probably be a really cool shot it'll be a really cool shot if they come back to the herd and there's a rim light around them. So when we're panning, we're ultimately, the biggest goal is the wider the area you have to follow, the easier it is to find the pace that they're running and then keep the camera going. So I was at 40th of a second there, trying to just slow the pace or keep exact pace with the animal, and then you're on multiple shutter and you're just taking as many photos as you can, moving along, and then you get some pretty cool. There's really one cool one. I think there's a few, and it's sort of a 1 in 100 shot. The more you practice, the better you'll get at it, obviously. But still, with a lot of practice, you still like 1 in 100 shot that you get it right. So you just got to keep moving, keep panning, keep the flow of the whole thing going. But really cool. I mean, this interaction, and just to sit with wildebeest. Often people run away from things like this, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen such cool things just by taking the time with an animal that you might see very often, but in the greatest sense of the whole thing, is such a beautiful creature to be part of, to watch. Their habits are very interesting, and who knows, you go running around looking for predators. Remember, predators are looking for them. Predators need to eat. So by sticking around with them for longer, you might have a chance. I remember one day watching impala, just talking to guests about impala, and we were chatting and chatting and chatting. And the next thing we knew, there was a leopard on top of one of the impalas. It had been hunting. We didn't know it was there until it was on top of it. Right, so we've got a beautiful rhino bull over here that's feeding through the grass. Again, the light is a bit harsh. We've sort of it's now 9:45 in the morning, and everything's a little crazy. So I'm gonna try and, thinking that it is a dark animal, a gray animal, that I'm gonna try and boost the light a little bit around him. There's a lot of brown, like light brown grass, as you can probably see in the background here. And as you lighten that up, it becomes this whitish yellow color in the background. It creates quite a nice background. So I parked myself quite a long distance away from him just to allow for two things. One, he was moving towards me, so I want to give space for that. Two, I have enough lens, so the 400, and then I've got a 600 with the 1.4 times converter. And what I'm doing now is getting front on shots, and what that's going to create is this beautiful background blur. And even though it's so dark, here he is coming, looking at me again, it creates a platform for some really nice black and white images, or just a high contrast image. And I'm just keeping focus on his eye, making sure the eye is in focus, and then taking it from there. He's busy marking territory. Now there is also a midden that I know is up the top here, which he's more than likely heading towards. So if he goes that direction, I might actually even just set up a remote camera out there and then use the Sony app to be able to control the camera, so when he gets to that point that I can get a nice maybe a wide angle image of him there. And I've got too much lens there, so we go back to the 400. Okay, I'm going to shoot in portrait here, and I've got a shallow depth of field so that I keep him
Now on the last day, I was moving around and I'd packed all the other lenses away. I wanted to focus on just using a 600mm just to give a different perspective, and I came across a rhino and a calf that had been mud bathing. So there was mud caked all over her. She was really beautiful. Light was perfect. The sun was just starting to set, so there was this beautiful golden glow going on. And what I tried to do was get in a lower position and photograph her through the grass, so that you get a foreground blur, and then her texture, especially with that 600, is such an incredible lens for its definition and how things come out, and you could get the real skin texture of what was going on. So I spent a bit of time with her just trying to keep myself low. Using the 600mm also allowed me to drop down, get a bit lower, and to give you, the viewer, and a feeling like I was out of the car and right down on the ground. But just because of that long lens, it gives us a little bit of extra leverage and makes it seem like we're a bit lower. So it was an incredible sighting. It was an incredible time that we had. And we got some really cool and different photographs. It's all about trying to be creative and trying to use that creativity to do something that others haven't. In the next episode, we're gonna look at leopard, and I had a mad sighting of leopards mating, and a third leopard came in and there was a major tussle, and I'll go through some of the issues that I had at that point. Light wasn't great, but we'll talk about that in the thing, but the sighting was ridiculous. We're also going to talk about buffalo. There was a huge herd of about 500 buffalo on the reserve, and getting again photos of these very difficult animals to photograph due to their dark skin texture, small eyes. So we look at ways that we can really make something great out of those images. We also talk about the tallest, most beautiful animal, the giraffe, and how to get things with them. So there were some really great sightings. In the last episode, we are going to be talking post-production. So I'm going to take you through my workflow on how I moved through the nearly 11,000 images that I took in this week, how I post-produce certain ones, and we'll look at them, how I do them in Lightroom, how I move them from Lightroom to Photoshop if I want to really clean things up and do a little bit more, and it'll give you a rounded feeling. Also, don't forget to use the promo code WildRichard04, WildRichard04, for a 10% discount off your next Sony Alpha purchase. This can be claimed off cashbacks on the website cashbacks.co.za, and there are some terms and conditions, like the 400 and 600 behind me here don't apply, the 20mm doesn't apply. So there's a few lenses and things that are out, but for the rest of the stuff, it's all there. It's all on the website. You'll be able to check it out. But for now, I hope to see you in the next episode. If you have any questions, please drop me a line, a DM on Instagram at richard.diggerveya, or find my name on Facebook. I'm happy to take any of your questions. And stay safe, start practicing, and get ready, because I have a feeling we will be getting out into the wild very soon. Have a wonderful day, guys.